Hello everyone, this is the content video for Environmental Science Unit 4, Section 2. We're going to talk about how populations of different species impact each other. All right, so first we want to kind of give a little bit of background here. So niches are the organism's physical home, and usually a population has a single niche, but it might have a couple different niches or a larger niche than it actually uses, or a realized niche, maybe smaller than the potential niche. Right? I know that this word it's kind of hard to pronounce. It looks weird in English. Niches is a incorrect pronunciation. It's niche or niches, right? And all of the environmental factors that are necessary for a species' survival get lumped into its niche. Okay? This also talks about how the species interacts with other organisms, because if that changes, its niche might change as well. So the first easy big one to think about is competition. So individuals or populations that use the same resource compete with one another. This usually ends up with both individuals or populations being hurt in some way, shape, or form. Right? There are things like indirect competition, where, say, an insect might feed on a certain plant during the daytime, and then another insect feeds on that same plant at the nighttime. But if this one, the daytime one insect, eats more plant, there's less plant for the nighttime insects to eat. All right? So this one ends up hurting this one, or vice versa. Okay? So both individuals or populations are hurt in some way, shape, or form. There also might be something called niche restriction, where a certain species or population may only utilize a little bit of its niche instead of all of its niche. So these warbler species, these birds here, these 5, all feed on insects in different parts of the tree. Right? They generally are the same types of trees. That doesn't matter. It's the insects we're talking about. Okay, so if you could see the different colors, the red, the orange, the yellow, the blue, and the purple, fuchsia maybe, they do overlap, right? Like this Blackburnian warbler, here the orange overlaps with all of the red and some of the yellow. This blue overlaps with some of the yellow, some of the orange, and some of the purple. This purple overlaps with some of the blue. But they could all eat insects from the whole tree. They just choose not to. All right? And this isn't a conscious individual choice that the birds make, as far as we can tell. This is they tend to do this. So some of them may eat insects from other parts. But for the most part, on average, they choose to eat insects from different parts of the trees. This means that they can all 5 species, can still hunt the same tree, but have less overlap on their niches. So they all can benefit a little, but they're also all hurt a little. So that's niche restriction. Predation is an easy one to think about, because we're all familiar with the concept of predators eating prey. You probably learned that back in middle school, right? So this is a graph below my face of a lynx population and a snowshoe hare population. Both live in tundras and taigas, or above the snow line on mountains. And the lynx will eat the snowshoe hare. So as the populations of snowshoe hare, those red areas down here, as they go up, a little bit later usually, the lynx population goes up. And when the lynx population goes up, the snowshoe hare population goes back down. If there are more snowshoe hares to eat, the lynx thrives. When there are less, the lynx has less kids, and usually more of them die from starvation. All right, the other concept is symbiosis. All right, and there are 3 types of symbiosis. We'll talk about them and their definitions. But symbiosis is when two or more species live in close proximity to one another in a relationship where neither benefits from the death of the other. So they either help each other or they are hurt by the other one dying. Or one benefits and the other doesn't care at all. So mutualism is when both species or populations benefit from the other. So our concept here is a bee and some flowers. When the bee visits the flower, it gets some pollen, it gets food for the hive, but it also takes some of that pollen and spreads it to the other flowers and allows for the flowers to reproduce. Commensalism is where one population benefits from the presence of another population, but that population does not benefit or be harmed by the other. So the fish that swim next to like large sharks, those benefit from the shark. Anything the shark doesn't eat or the little scraps that might fall out of its mouth, the little fish can eat. They may also serve to clean the outside of that fish and actually eat the bacterium that grow on it. But the larger fish or the shark doesn't care. It isn't hurt by those little fish and it is not benefiting from their presence. The one that a lot of people think about is parasitism here. So a parasite is something that lives in or on another species and benefits from it. All right. So think of mosquitoes or ticks or lice or those wasps that attack spiders and scorpions and lay their eggs inside them, where they will benefit by like taking nutrients from a usually larger species, and that species is not killed by this act, but is usually weakened. And they may catch something that might kill them, like humans can catch malaria from mosquitoes or West Nile virus from mosquitoes, and it might hurt them severely. Texas deer ticks have a type of, or Lone Star tick has a type of virus that can make you allergic to red meat. Not a great thing. Not something that most people will want. So they are hurt by it, but they're not killed. Because if the human dies, then that parasite can't leech off of them. Pun intended there. All right, so populations of different species impact each other by either harming or hurting, right? So we have a few examples of them. Make sure you know each one of those. If you're in my class, those will probably come up on the quiz that's coming up soon. If you have any questions, as always, be sure to shoot me a message. Have a good one.